Welcome to People Love Process. One question I've been asked a lot over the years is around detailing in context of my designs and artwork. It's usually stated like this. Someone might come up to me and ask me, how do you know what level of detail to add to your designs or artwork? Well, I would respond to that by saying knowing what level of detail to add depends on the type of project you're creating. For example, an illustration is definitely going to have a lot more detail than a logo mark, for example. So in this movie, we're going to address the latter, the branding aspects, and demonstrate how to create a graphic motif and then add simple detailing to improve the overall design without overcomplicating its iconic flair. So let's dive right into it. The theme for the one I want to walk you through is a rhino. And this is a real world project that I worked on several years ago. And I just want to walk you through how I handled the detailing because it does add a lot to the final image, look, and feel. So when I first started drawing this, I drew these stubby little feet on this thumbnail sketch of a rhino, and I'm going, okay, that's way too short. And then I drew new legs on it, and I go, now they look way too long. And I'm going, I better go look at reference instead of just drawing this out of my head. And that's probably the best reason to use real world reference. It doesn't mean it has to be realistic or even proportioned realistic, because this ultimately isn't going to be. There's a lot of artistic license you can use when you're working with a theme like that, but looking at real world reference like a rhino. And technically, this isn't even the right species of rhino that I want to do. This one has plating, but I really like that aspect of plating. And what I mean by that is these areas that are kind of segmented out. I want to kind of capitalize on that. But this specific breed, I don't remember the name of the breed, I like the plating, but I don't think their head looks as much like what you think of when you think of rhino. There's different species that have cooler heads. I don't even know if that's the right way to say that. I just think they look cooler than this dude does. This guy has like a really blunt kind of horn. I like the ones with the sharp horn. And so we're going to take license in that. I'm going to take basically the idea of a rhino and the plating on this rhino, but I'm going to mash them together and make the idealistic rhino for the logo mark I want to create. So I go look at other reference, and this is more of what I think of when I think of rhino in terms of its head with the horns, the way the ears are. And this has that nice iconic quality of the symbiotic relationship between this little bird that usually perches on top. I've actually used that on another logo project I worked on where the concept was working together. And so I use that as the metaphor. The client, they didn't go with any of those directions. Some of my favorite work I've ever done, and it kind of got blown off, but that's the way it goes. But this is the reference I used. And then I just started doing some loose sketches on top of it because I don't want to just trace the photo. I want to kind of iconify it. I want to simplify it. I want to deduce it down into shapes that are going to communicate a rhino, but not just be like a silhouette of sorts. And so this is where I'm thinking of that plating, looking at the other reference, drawing from this one. But the drawing process is one where you kind of have to just start. And then as you go, struggle with things, decide on the fly, that's working, this isn't working, and make decisions to create your next drawing. So it's definitely a process. So you see where I start here was just a thumbnail without looking at reference. I look at reference, draw this one. This is more realistically proportioned, but it's still not capturing that essence I want. And so I'm simplifying this down, and I tried this one where I get really angular with everything, but I'm not quite liking this. And I think the head's a little bit long. It's not as small as it should. And if you look at the first head, this looks like, I don't know, part of a dragon with puppy ears, not so much a rhino. I look at this one, I decide, well, I'm going to start curving it. Maybe that'll look better. And as soon as I did that, I go, this just looks like like a big hog with a rhino head on it. That's not working, so I kind of abandoned that. Decided the body was a little too long, so I kind of shortened that and just focusing on this, and I'm starting to like this. It's okay, but I decide, what really a rhino, it kind of goes into his shoulders and then right into his head. They don't really have a neck. It's just a head popping out of these massive muscular shoulders. And so I decided to focus on that. And as soon as I did this, I go, I kind of like that. But is it exactly what a rhino looks like? No. But does it communicate as a rhino? Yes. But the only thing I didn't like about this, I thought his head was way too long and big now, and it needed to be adjusted. So on the next one, I adjusted the head size. And as soon as I did this, I go, okay, I'm kind of on the right path, I think. I'm liking the proportions here. I'm going to draw it again just to work out those shapes a little more. I also improved the plating here. Well, this is touching. I didn't like the conversion of these lines, so I kind of moved that apart on this one. But I thought his legs were a little too thin on this one, so I beefed those up because they're like tree trunk legs, almost like an elephant of sorts. And that's what I wanted to reflect on here. But then the more I was looking at his legs, I go, I think I need to make this foreground leg and this one coming together instead of the background, because that's kind of the way they walk. They don't walk like I've drawn it here. So I kind of realized I got that wrong. And then I drew this out. And as soon as I got this drawn out, I go, that's it. This is going to work. I can tighten this up now. So that's how I work through the process of drawing. And I'd say from beginning to end, this is probably about an hour's worth of work, just looking at it, thinking, trying different things, and just getting to the point where it's going to communicate correctly. That's the most important thing. Does it need to be dead on accurate to what a real world rhino looks like? No, it just needs to communicate. In this case, it needs to be tough and strong because the brand name itself has tough in it. So you don't want some little jovial looking rhino because that doesn't look tough. That just looks cute, which in its own context could work. But in this context, it needs to be strong, tough, and like bold. It's not going to move. He's kind of holding his ground of sorts. This is the refined sketch I did where I drew it one more time using a mechanical pencil. And this is where I get it to. Once I have this is where I'll go ahead and select it. And I usually adjust the transparency to about 20, like that. Lock the layer, and then I just start building on top of it. The first thing I did is establish the base because this needs to be anchored to the ground, meaning he needs to look like he's not going to fall over. So I established the base here. But I start thinking in simple shapes because obviously the eye can just be elliptical shape. We're using elliptical shape to create this curve. And I want to use, again, I think I mentioned this in the previous movie, contour continuation. I always pay attention to that because it really helps the viewer's eye to go from, in this case, the tip of this horn down to the front of his top of his head into this shape that it'll be the ear. So I like paying attention to that kind of detail. So if I'm creating all the shapes in his head, I'll start with this just to get this profile here down to the bottom lip of the bottom part of his mouth. But notice I created it so as it comes up here, it also forms the bottom edge of the ear. So I'm paying attention again to that contour continuation. Now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to select, and this is where I'll go use a plugin called Subscribe. It's the Arch by Points tool. You can, everything I'm showing you don't have this tool natively in Illustrator. So how you do it in Illustrator is grab the pen tool, just start wherever you want in terms of this horn right here. You could go here, you could snap to this point, wherever it comes to a point, gets a point. These are easy to discern and on this style, since it's so geometric. Not a whole lot of thinking to do that. That'd be the rough build. Then you could go back with the anchor point tool, grab the paths. This allows you to bend and shape the paths like this. And you can adjust those and finesse them however you want. In this case, I'm just matching what I've already determined in my sketch, like that. And then I like things to have a subtle curve, even when it's not super curvy, like that. So that's how you build it natively in Illustrator. But I'm going to delete that because when I create this stuff now, I use a plugin called Subscribe by Astute Graphics and the Arch by Points tool right here, because it makes the process faster. I can just go click, go to this anchor, form this curve. I don't have to touch any Bezier curves. Form this one, click on this, go down here, figure out where I'm going to position it, pull that out, go here, go to this next one, go like that, here, go to this next one. And even on little areas like this, I don't want it perfectly straight. I'm going to put ever so slightly a curve there. And then to close it out, I'll go like this. So that's how I like to do it. It just makes the process easier, I've found, to build using a plugin like this. And then this is a perfect curve. If I think something should be tweaked a little bit, I'll go back in and I'll tweak it like that. But that's usually how I build to get all those angles. And I find it easier building in parts like this. It just makes the process just a whole lot easier. And now if we turn on these ear shapes, this is where I'll take shapes that I originally will have and use to form the head. But on this one, I'll go ahead and copy it. We'll fill it. We'll make sure it's on the same level as the ear. And then I'll take this shape that I already created and I'll go to Pathfinder and I'll go minus front to trim it. Then I'll take this shape, clone it, Command C, Command F, fill it with blue. We'll make sure it's on the same ear layer. And then I'll trim that ear. So that's how I let one shape to help form the art also use it to create the other elements that I want as well. And then on this one, I'll take this shape, bring it to the front. I'll select this. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, no, I'll do that. I'll select this. I must have that on the wrong layer, and I did. We have to move that to the right layer on top of this shape of the head. Pay attention what layers you're on. Now it's just kind of cut this out like that. Well, how am I going to fix this? Well, this is where I probably should have structured this a little differently, but that's okay. We'll make a copy, and I'll just close a shape, kind of like, oops, looks like I have that. We'll join that together. Oh, I have that on the wrong layer as well, I think. Go like this. We'll go group, go inside the group, select these, go join. Then we can close out this path like that. All I'm doing is I'm making a shape to edit the other shape here. So with that, we'll bring it to the front just so you can see what I'm doing. We'll select this shape and we'll trim that. So now we have everything there. Have an extra copy. We'll take this now. I don't need to worry about that. Oops. I guess I didn't get that connected for some reason. It's okay. We'll just go ahead and add it in now. Add a little round to it. Close it. Take this shape. Doesn't matter if that's all messed up because we're going to fuse all these together, these two shapes together like this, and we'll unite them. So that's all I was trying to show, and I should have built that whole shape out when I built this edge, but I didn't. But no big deal. That's what I do in real life too, is I forget to do something. I'm certainly not talking or carrying on a conversation unless my cat's staring at me. Now, I like to separate things into pieces. Like, I wouldn't want to try to build this whole body out with one path. It's just kind of silly to do it that way. So I separate into pieces. So here's a piece where I'm creating this part here. And I'm doing this, and then I create this part in the middle, purposely overlap the back end, the hindquarters, because I can take these two parts and just clone them once I have them built, Command-C, Command-F, and then once I have that, I can unite these, select this inner plate, and just go minus front, and then it trims those edges. So that's what I like to do. If I'm building this leg, let's say, I'll go back to that same tool, snap. This is where Smart Guides comes on. Command U to turn on, Command U to turn off. Go to the base here, establish that. I'll go over here, start somewhere about there, go to the base, add a subtle curve there, switch to the pen tool, and then I'll just close out this path like that. And then this, of course, will just be flat. Then I can take elements of that plate, this leg, that head, clone it, Command-C, Command-F, fill them all. We'll go ahead and unite it. You're going to always run into this at times when things butt fit with the Pathfinder. Just hit unite again. That usually solves it. It's not solving this, but that's okay because we just need to trim this. And we'll trim it. So now we have the leg shape we needed. So that's how I'd build that content. But on this one, you can see I purposely left this top edge incomplete because I wanted the eye to carry through each of those shapes. And it's easier to build everything other than the top part of those shapes like this. Then I can take this shape, just clone it, Command-C, Command-F, select whatever shape it is, trim the top on that one, select this, trim the top on this one, and select the last copy of this shape and trim the hindquarters like this. And of course, once you have the hindquarters, we'll copy that, we'll trim this. So everything on this design is going to end up being kind of butt fit together. Butt fit, and we're on the butt. Okay. We'll select that. We'll clone it. Grab the leg, minus front, so you can see everything's built. The ears aren't that way. That's okay. We're gonna solve that now. We'll just go ahead and actually on this one, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna zoom in because I think I want to fuse it to the back of the rhino. So I'm just gonna snap it like this. And this is a throwaway shape for no other reason than to edit. I'm on the wrong layer again. On the ear layer. The ear layer is causing all kinds of problems. Well, minus front. Then we can take the back. This is going to go now to the shoulders. So we'll go ahead and move it up to the shoulders. Select these two, unite them, just so it fuses them all together like that. And now we have all of our kind of base vector artwork. And this is where I would just go ahead and minus front on this. So if I select that, make sure, once again, it's on the wrong layer. We'll go here, minus front, all that, just to get all of these. And the color we're going to turn these to is going to be gray, this color right here. So let's go ahead and turn this layer on because we've already colored all of our segments. Our simple color palette is this, but notice these are all in segments. That's because even before I do the gray, let's kind of step back one step. We'll just give it an outline of this magenta. I'll print this out because I want to figure out my shading detail on those plates because I want those plates to show up. I don't want everything, just to be gray because what's the point of having all these shapes in here if you're not going to call them out? So this is where I'd print it out and I'd figure out all those shapes. So that's where I print it out like this. And then I just experiment. How am I going to handle that detailing, handle that shading? And this takes me all of maybe a minute to draw this. You wouldn't want to try to build it in vector. You're just wasting a lot of time where you can experiment in a drawn form a lot faster. Now, if you prefer drawing digitally, same thing. It's going to go a lot faster than vector work. So this is how I kind of do my exploration in terms of the detailing. Once I have it, I scan in the one I choose, which was this one, and I build it the same way I build my base art, once again, just with vector shapes following what I've drawn out already on top. So what I end up with is all of these shapes. And in terms of these detail shapes, we're just going to color it the same gray here, like this. And then we're going to go ahead and set it to multiply. It'll get a little darker, but I don't want the value to be this dark. So we're going to change it to, I don't know, we'll try 60. And I think that looks pretty cool, like that. So that's how I would add detailing on even something that's as flat and simplified as this. But for what we want to do for the brand we're working on is they have a specified color for their brand called Tough Security. And so we want to colorize it. Let's go ahead and turn on, we're going to use this red color here. And that's the color they want to make the rhino, is they want him to be red. And if we have our detailing on it, you can see this is a little faint. So I'm going to select this. It's still gray, multiplying over the top of the red, but instead of 60, we're going to bump this up all the way to, I think we'll try 75. Yeah, that looks good. So that looks a lot better now on a red. And I think it looks tougher, not so... I mean, we're already taking some artistic license with the proportions. So the color, who cares if it's red or gray? And it goes with the branding that we lock up with the type. Here's Tough Security. I think this is going to work good. Now, whenever I'm working on a design that's a modular design like this, where the rhino can exist independently of the typography that's used in the logo type, I like to mock it up in different ways. I have a vertical format, a horizontal format. I might do a badge design, or I just might do the character itself on its own. And then when I present to clients, I like showing them in different contexts. This is obviously on a white background. That looks fine. But if I go ahead and clone this, Command-C, Command-F, and I just slide it over and we put it on a red background, we don't want it to be red, so I'm going to go in here and just select everything. Actually, because we have it in isolation mode, we can click into it because it's easier to see. And then I can select everything that's red, and I can turn that to white like this. I can select this type, turn that to white. Now, on a white background, we had this set for 75 because that's what works best on red, but if it's white, I think that's too dark. So we're going to go to 55 on this, like that, and that'll change all the detailing. And I think it looks great now on a red background. So one setting on one type of usage might not be what works best on another type of usage. So we're going to take this and we're going to clone this, Command-C, Command-F. We'll slide it down. Maybe you're going to use it in the context of a brochure or marketing piece. And in this case, we want it, I usually, when it's on top of a background, this one reads pretty well without doing this, but I think it looks even better when you select a design like this. You go to Effects, you go to Style, and we go Outer Glow. And I'm just going to select a nice process black here. We'll use this one right here, and we'll go OK. And I think those settings are fine. And it just makes it pop a little better off the background. Now, if we move this, you can see it just adding this nice outer glow to it. And it just works better on a photographic background. Let's make a clone of this. Command-C, Command-F. We'll align it with this one down here on the black background. And this is where we had just changed the black type to a white. And that's all I would change for that context. So I like showing them that it could be used on a wide range of backgrounds or applications just to make the process easier. Let's take a look at a couple other projects. Well, actually on this one, I've shown you yellow images before. And they're great because when I'm presenting concepts to a client, I like to mock it up as if it's in the real world. And so this is a good example of taking a badge design I created for this client and applying it to a truck as a vehicle graphic. Maybe this is what the security guards drive around in, just so they can get the idea of how this would exist or feel or look to the audience, to those who see these things and identify with them in the real world. And yellowimages.com is one of the best. Right now, Adobe hypes all these little things they shove into their programs and they kind of half-bake them. The latest with Illustrator is the Mockup feature, where you could take a logo and drop it on a T-shirt or drop it on a water bottle, and look how awesome it is. It's not very awesome. It doesn't look anything as good as what you can get from Yellow Images. You can get something that looks photorealistic with Yellow Images, and Adobe should be focusing on improving the vector quality build methods in Illustrator and not shoving in stupid crap like that is better fit for Adobe Photoshop. Put it in Photoshop, because that's where you should be doing it, not Illustrator. Focus on vector. You still have a bug that's 10 years old now plus, and you haven't fixed it. So I'd rather you focus on that than shoving all these hyped up things that are half-baked into Illustrator. So thus ends my rant. Let's move to a couple more examples of applying this kind of subtle detailing on flat motifs. Here's a rough for a sketch. Now, this is kind of interesting story. So this will be a little bit of a rabbit trail, but I did the D&D logo for Dungeons and Dragons, and there's a movie on People Love. You can watch the process of how I create it, and I use subtle detailing like this to add dimension to flat motif of the D&D logo. Well, there's a crowdsourcing site. And this skateboard company called Dragon Barons went there and they said, hey, we need a logo. Well, somebody stole the D&D logo. I don't own it. I just designed it. Hasbro owns it. And they submitted it and they won the competition for that logo. Somebody saw that and said, wait a minute, that's not your design. Vaughn did that and Hasbro owns that. And they told the company, and the company tracked me down and said, hey, we saw that somebody stole D&D and sold it to us. And I said, how about this? I'll create a kissing cousin of the D&D logo, meaning I can do something that's uniquely yours, but you still get the benefit of it being a dragon since your product is dragon bearing. Not only that, if you notice subtly, I made it a D. So it's also that as well. And this was the sketch I did, the rough build. Once again, rough build just means I'll go back in with the anchor point tool and then I'll just finesse all these curves. I'm obviously not going to do that, but now to show you, but that's the process I use. So once it's all done, I have this nice artwork. I can then select vector shapes like these, and I can go ahead and go to Pathfinder and go to Unite. Make sure to always check appearance. This is going to default to a group. I always change it to a compound. We have colors here. In this case, I would select this base color red. But this is where the shading comes in, because like the project I just showed you with the Rhino, I'll print out the black and white, work out shading, place it, build the shading using the same process. So ultimately, when it's all said and done, we have this nice dimensional logo mark for dragon bearings locked up with the type. It looks great and it works great on their packaging, and they were pretty happy with it. Now, just to show you that I run into issues with clients just as much as anybody else might run into issues. I originally did this. The original owner loved it, but his partner didn't like it. And so he decided not to use it. And I said, that's fine. You're still paying me though. And they did. But I turned around, I did stickers because I thought it looked cool. And I posted them on Instagram, and he saw it and he's going, man, I don't care what my partner says. I want to use that. And so we continued the process, and they ultimately did use it, and it worked out really well for them. So sometimes I don't know, working with clients can be weird at times, and that was one of them, but it all worked out when it was all said and done. Here's a municipality brand mark that I created is for a small town in Louisiana called, for an agency working with a small town in Louisiana called Jenna. That territory was originally founded by the Spaniards, so that's why I did this. But I used subtle detailing just to add dimensionality to this as well. And this is another example using that same principle, locked up with the typography, works well. They didn't go with this direction. They went with another direction we created, but it worked well in this context. Here's a school that I did. And whenever I work on this type of styling, you need to use dimensional shading just to bring dimension to a flat motif. Now, do you ever want to do this style without adding dimension? No, you don't. That's why you say no. On this one, they wanted, I don't know why, I think it was something like looking to the future, but remembering the past type thing. If I remember right, it was something like that. But, I like entertaining myself and making voices. So there you go. But this worked great on the football helmets for the team. And the last example I want to show you, I've shown you this before, but it doesn't matter how subtle or overt this kind of shading is. It really does improve the design. This design benefited from having just a subtle shading on the white element in this Phoenix for this brand mark exploration. Now, when I create, and I always create a reverse version of the logo that works on a dark or colorized background down here, it also works for that. So if I go to the graphic styles and apply a graphic style here like this, you can see it even works in that context. So I'd classify the specific types of projects I showed in this movie as what I would call illustrative design, meaning it takes illustrative thinking to deduce and simplify the theme and shading detail, all the while remaining distinctly graphic to align with the design usage and needs regarding flexibility of use. I encourage you to pick a theme and give this method a try and see what you can produce. Doesn't have to be an animal. It can be anything you want, but utilize this methodology and see what you can come up with. Access to the exercise files for each of my People of Process movies can always be accessed via a link in the description below each movie. A big thank you to those who have and to those who have also become members as well. You continue to help me make great content for this channel, and I really do appreciate your support. I can't thank you enough for that. Until next time, thank you for watching People of Process, and as always, I hope this content helps you to improve your own creative process.